Hello and welcome to the FinTech Finance Virtuarena. I'm Doug Mackenzie, the host of today's session. Today we're going to be looking at how banks are adapting to a way more innovative payment data landscape, especially when it comes to cross-border. And today I'm joined by two brilliant guests who are going to help inform us on the situation, which seems to be changing every month, which is absolutely exciting when it comes to the payments industry. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Suzanne, could you, nice to meet you. Could you give our audience a bit of background to yourself and your role at Rabobank, please?
Yes, sure, thanks. I'm Suzan van Eeten, working for the Rabobank, responsible for all SEPA payment methods within the Rabobank. Rabobank is a Dutch all-finance bank. We're doing around 12 million transactions a day, so fully involved in all of the payment transactions.
Amazing. Well, I'm really excited to get that insight across the whole of the Eurozone. That should be absolutely fascinating. And Andre, thank you so much for joining us again. It's brilliant to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Very good, Doug. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Susan.
Excellent. So Andre, could you give us and our viewers who might not be aware, a bit of background to yourself and also Intix, please?
Yes, sure, certainly. This year I celebrate 30 years in fintech space. I spent 24 years first at Swift, working for all the banks on the planet on various innovations, mainly on transaction banking innovations. And over the last 6 years, I've worked with Intix, which is a technology provider helping banks indeed make their transaction data accessible and actionable.
Incredible. Right. Well, Andre, I'm really excited to have that wealth of experience on today's session. That's going to be absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us. Now, with that in mind, guys, I think payments are getting very innovative. It's no longer the industry which changes every 50 years. So, Susanna, I'd love to come to you and see your insights in what you think have been the major innovations when it comes to cross-border payments, and what ones are worth investing in.
Yes, thanks. And where Andre is already 30 years within payments, I'm I think around 6 or 7 years in payments. So I see the major innovations in payments. And for example, my teams are responsible for the transformation that we're doing with instant payments. In the Dutch market, we have the online payments. We are all in instant payments, and we see that as a huge transformation for our clients. The expectations of the clients are that the payments are instant, and more also in cross-border you see that there's more transparency, and with that transparency also I think there are more innovations to come.
Interesting. Now, I completely agree, and that's a really interesting kind of top-down perspective. And Andre, would you agree that the customer is really becoming at the heart of it? And also, I'm really interested in your perspective from working on a lot of the payment platforms as well. What have you seen when it comes to innovations on the incumbent platforms as well across the 30 years you've been in payments?
Yeah, and actually during the time I was at Swift, not much happened in cross-border payments besides, Swift delivering new standards and the market really getting interested in processing more and more lower value payments. So we saw a few new entrants, but what has been remarkable are the last 5 years. Really major innovations, both from incumbents like Swift on more transparency, as Susan said, but also from major other players coming out of the card business, Visa, MasterCard, getting into the account-to-account payments, cross-border payments business, and as you know, coming from the card-based payments. We see other types of innovations like on ISO 20022, so a convergence to a common data dictionary, a common set of messaging standards, and those are real standards because they are not part of a commercial enterprise, they are real ISO standards. And we see an objective of the whole industry to move to more transparency indeed, Susan, lower pricing to process those lower value transactions, and to going to a real-time processing, because the customers want faster processing, lower cost, more convenience, more information. And all of those players, incumbents and new entrants, are really working on that common objective. So it's really an exciting space over the last 5 years. I think the next 5 years will be even more exciting as the results of all those innovations will materialize, and the central banks are getting into the picture as well, more on the retail side, but that could also impact the wholesale side with central bank digital currencies, which is going even further into the lower cost and higher speed cross-border payments. So really fascinating space to be in these days.
Definitely, and I've got to name drop Bitcoin recently in that movement. Now, Andre, I think you've touched on something that I think is going to be quite important to the whole conversation, and it's the fact that all these standards have kind of enabled payment transactions to contain far more data than ever before. You know, we're seeing within Australia, for instance, we're seeing real-time payments even being able to add invoices. So Suzanne, if I could come to you, payment transactions, now that they contain such rich data, what are the major challenges that banks face when making use of such transaction data? And I'm also really excited to kind of hear what the use cases might be.
Yes, thanks. Well, we see in the storage of the data that the more data we have, the better we can help our clients, and also the safer we can make the payments, because it increases our transaction monitoring, the real-time transaction monitoring, but also we can give the information back to our clients. So, for example, we get less calls in our contact center about where is my payment, or what is the description? I don't recognize this payment. So we see that we can better service our clients, but also because we have more transaction data, and we can, because of that fast processing, the fast checks that we can do. For example, we make a check between the IBAN and the name with a transfer of payments, and if that is not matching the IBAN and the name, we give that information real time back to our clients, so the client can rethink about, do I really want to make this transaction? Did I make a typo, or is this maybe a fraudster? So with the more information we get, the better we can help our clients with or gaining insights in their spend or in their payments, or making banking more safe.
Interesting. I think that's really the kind of major role that a bank still employs, is being that kind of trusted provider to make that payment. And Andre, would you agree with that we're now seeing huge challenges with that data, but ultimately it's to benefit the customer, isn't it, having that rich payment data?
Yes, we are really in a time where banks are starting to use that data, as Suzanne explained, to offer more value to their clients. And we can talk about various use cases. I want to highlight also that just after the financial crisis, the regulators increased the burden on banks to fight financial crime. And this data that banks owned but did not really use so much between 2010 and 2015, banks started to use that data much more to screen payments because of regulatory instructions, obligations, in order to indeed fight financial crime. So this data has been mainly used so far to address regulatory requirements, but more and more it is there to automate additional processes. And we can talk about use cases on the operational side, on the business side, on the compliance side. As Suzanne says, delivering access to transaction data to their clients is a way to increase client satisfaction and also decrease the burden on the service, the help desk. The challenge often for banks, as we see it on the Intix side, is that this data is available within the banks, but it's spread on so many internal systems that the challenge for the bank is to get access to that data internally within their own infrastructure. And once they get access to one system, then the challenge is to get access to a few dozens of systems and to associate the different pieces of information to have a business understanding of the whole transaction internally within their own infrastructure. And that's really a challenge because banks are equipped with a lot of legacy systems. There are new ways of working, APIs, ISO 20022, richer data that is coming into the picture, and basically systems needs to change. So you have new technologies combined with older technologies, but still working. And basically what we're doing on the Intix side is helping the banks get a smooth and end-to-end access to that data so that they can offer the value they want to their internal users or external clients.
Interesting. So, you've kind of touched on new ways of working there, Andre, and I think, it would be remiss to not bring up, and I hopefully won't speak on it for too long, but the pandemic still plays a role in everything that goes on. And so, with that in mind then, Andre, with the front office and compliance teams, has technology kind of caught up to helping various different institutions all the way down to the small fintechs? Or, if, for instance, if this pandemic had happened maybe 5 years ago, would we have been in a very different payments landscape than where we are today?
Well, basically, indeed, the pandemic has accelerated the need to digitize more and more processes, because we see the issue with delivering information on a physical medium. So more and more different processes need to be digitized. We see move from cash to digital payments, electronic payments as well, mainly on the retail side. And on our side, on the wholesale side with Intix, we have seen many of our clients asking to extend their use of Intix to remote access, because their team members were working from home, and actually accessing secure transaction processing systems from outside locations was seen as too risky. And Intix is basically a way to provide a data layer, giving access to the right information to remote users, without the need actually to allow those remote users to access internal transaction processing systems. So it's this intermediary layer that we play at Intix that we see that has been quite at the very start of the pandemic, has been quite useful to many of our customers. But definitely there is a surge in digitizing more processes, in offering more access to that data. And I think this is exactly what Rabobank is doing as well, through their own web portal.
Nice. Now, sorry, Suzanne, did you want to jump in there?
I would confirm that. So we are digitalizing our processes, but I would also say that we immediately saw that our customers make more payments in digital, and the cash payments, we see a decrease in cash payments, and we see that the online payments, but also the contactless payments by cards, we are now in more than 80% of contactless is contactless of all of the payments. So also the COVID period, fastened the transition to contactless and to online payments. Interesting.
Now, if we're talking about grand changes in the industry as well, we've kind of we've touched on, Andre, you brought up ISO 20022, but Suzanne, if I could come to you and talk a bit more in detail about it. What do you see that kind of global standard? What's it going to do for the global payments industry?
I think in general, global standards helps us especially in cross-border payments, in making these transparent, fasten the payments, and all these standards. And I think also within the cards business, but also in the HEH rails, we see that standards helps us in getting a more efficient payment infrastructure.
Yeah. Now, with that in mind, then also kind of looking at moving from if we were to kind of look at cross-border payments. Obviously, SWIFT plays such a huge role in that. So Andre, if I could come to you as well and look at how SWIFT GPI, from your experience at SWIFT, is making payments more transparent. What are the major impacts or possibly risks that we're starting to see that? Because now, a bank's traditional role would have been kind of making that payment on a certain amount of time. Now that's kind of becoming instant and far more transparent. What does that mean for the payments industry as a whole?
Yeah, cross-border payments were traditionally very opaque and based on SWIFT. And as I said at the beginning, there are new entrants coming in. What SWIFT the way SWIFT has reacted is basically by increasing the transparency of the process. Because if you can't move from day one to a real-time payment experience at cross-border level, then at least you can offer increased transparency, visibility on the intermediary steps to get the payment to the destination, to the beneficiary. And that is what SWIFT's GPI is all about. It's much more in terms of transparencies of fees and so on. So we're getting to a correspondent banking market that is becoming indeed far more transparent, less opaque. However, this can only happen if banks provide SWIFT GPI, this central engine with all the information required to track transactions from one bank to the other bank. And we know correspondent banking implies a series of banks being involved. So multiple banks have to feed the central tracker and have now more and more the obligation actually to do so. So there are new requirements that are getting imposed onto banks by SWIFT GPI, which is a new market practice, a new norm based on the standards that SWIFT established decades ago, but it's a better way of working. Now it puts a lot of pressure on banks because providing this data on a continuous basis at transaction level, at payment level, is quite a huge task, operational task, because they first have to get the data from their internal systems, and often that is where the challenge lies. So basically where we help in this process is basically complementing the SWIFT GPI interbank tracking. We enable banks to pull that data from their internal systems and make sure that they can not only know where the payments are within their own infrastructure, but also make sure that their obligations towards GPI service levels in terms of mainly in terms of speed of execution, are respected. So we add with Intix internal tracking of payments within the bank, which complements the SWIFT GPI interbank tracking. And this is critical for payments operations teams that have the responsibility on a continuous basis during the day to clear those payments as per the SLAs that are being imposed. The same logic will be applicable when banks start using the Visa B2B payments, account-to-account payments for B2B business, MasterCard, P27, and other rails that will offer real-time payments, because in that case, the pressure on banks to execute internally those payments will be even higher, because the expectation will not be just to offer transparency, but to process on a real-time basis. So whether you're getting through SWIFT or other channels, there is more pressure on banks to improve the internal infrastructure and to monitor at transaction level that all those payments are processed as per the SLAs of those infrastructures.
Interesting. Now, guys, we've kind of discussed the operation side of things. I'm really interested to see how this can go on and help the whole bank in a holistic view. So Suzanne, can I ask, how can having this improved data kind of visibility, but also richer data, go on to improve the strategic value within a bank and the kind of knock-on effect?
Yeah, well, it helps us in our mission, and our mission is to give our clients a financial healthy life. And we think that within a financial healthy life, insights in your spend are crucial. So with all these data, with these enriched data, we give that data kind of back to our clients with the insights For example, in the Rabobank app, so for our consumers, we have the subscription insight. And in that insight, you see all of the subscriptions that you have, and a lot of fixed costs you have as a consumer are not that top of mind, and sometimes you even don't know which subscriptions you all have. And with these kind of new services, we give that insight, and we also see that clients are actually, surprised for, did I have that subscription? Maybe I can stop it. So we also reducing the cost, reducing the amount of, unknown money going away from your pocket by giving you the insight. So it helps us accomplishing our mission to live a financial healthy life.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be so critical going forward now that, for instance, payments can go instantly. A lot of businesses, small, medium enterprises, that cash flow suddenly becomes a lot more dangerous to balance. And then you look up into the corporate side, that only gets exponentially more crazy when we're looking at those kind of funds. And Andrea, can I also get your perspective on the kind of knock-on effect throughout the bank and increasing value from how we're seeing this increased use in data to make payments just so much better for everyone?
Yeah, I like Susan's phrase of financial health, because indeed the increased visibility that Rabobank in this case is giving to its clients on the retail side, for instance, but it's the same logic on the wholesale side, is basically helping the clients take the right decisions to stop some subscriptions, for instance. So, and I think the key word here, as we experience it, but I think it's the same with Susan's example, is automation. We want to automate as many processes, because I don't think there are analysts at Rabobank creating those statistics. They are automatically generated into the app, the portal. And on the Intix side, we do that also for the wholesale market, whereby we first focusing on the banking operations internal team, we automate transaction tracking, business activity monitoring, so that they know immediately what are the few transactions that are blocked, that are blocked because of a glitch or whichever reason. And we tell them through an alert, this is going wrong. You have to intervene and address those issues. But I want to continue on this theme of automation, because in the future, banks will be completely automated. Going forward, more and more processes will be automated, not only on banking operations to check that everything goes well, but also in terms of providing more value-added services to their clients, such as reconciling some trade flows thanks to payment transaction data that can be automated as well, feeding in additional processes with data to automate further, possibly with an add-on such as artificial intelligence for credit management, for compliance, for liquidity forecasting. So this whole and the key ingredient to this automation is transaction data. Whether it's in Suzanne's examples or in the current examples we implement for banks with Intix, or the future ones we're working on, the key is to get access to the transaction data, to understand it, to add some additional intelligence, in analytics processes, depending on the use case. But the use case are definitely today very solid when it comes to operational excellence, compliance, and visibility in terms of the transactional flow. In the future, we're going to talk about additional use cases, but the foundation will still remain the same, is the transaction data.
Interesting. Now, Suzanne, do you agree with Andre there that the whole kind of workflow is going to have an element of automation at every point?
I agree. Automation is key, because with all of these transactions, in the introduction I said we're doing 12 million transactions a day. We need robotics, we need automation for the analysis that are on aggregated level or are only for our clients, but we need that automated. We gather the data in lakes, in data lakes, and we to do the analysis for our clients, everything is automated. And you also see for reporting, but also for compliance. We have no manual work. It's all done by automating, and we split the system in microsystems, and with APIs we are connecting and decoupling all our systems, because we're working with a lot of people in the data transparency. So therefore we kind of have different components in which we work parallel.
Yeah, I think the link, if I make, Doug, between automation, which sounds potentially operational, the link with automation to the strategic priorities is related to, first of all, decision making at the right time. So automated decision making is the purpose. And today, many decisions are still taken by human beings, but more and more those decisions will be based on so many data points, internal data, external data, and very specialized algorithm that it will only be a machine being able to take those decisions, and of course potentially with supervision by human beings. Yeah. And automation is only enabling to increase the margins, because your costs are decreasing. So if you can have better decisions with more data points and higher margins, then you are basically contributing to strategic priorities.
Yeah, for example, if I can add to that, with our acquiring side, so for our retailers, we have always on the same day or T+1, we have all of the financial income in one overview. So your terminal, your online payments, your cash payments, everything that you as an online retailer or offline retailer gathered, you have that in one overview. So the overview is automated, but the decision is made by the retailer, by the corporate consumer. But you need a kind of a cooperation between the automated overviews that we can have, but for now there are humans that are making the decisions based on these insights.
It's really exciting to kind of hear how that single window view and that automation as well is being given to the internal side on the bank side of things, but then also being put onto the consumer so that they then have that knock-on effect of having that customer experience, but also that automation. Guys, I think we're coming to time. Thank you so much for your input. It sounds like payments are, Andre, I think you brought up at the beginning, the next 5 years are going to be even more exciting than the previous 5 years. And I think that's so true, because by the sounds of it, this technology, this culture of innovating is exponentially increasing. So I'm very excited to see where this is going to go. And both of you, thank you so much for your insight, and also to our viewers as well. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course YouTube and LinkedIn, where I'll see you in the comments, guys. And to both of you, Andre and Suzanne, thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you again in the future, and yeah, have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Thank you.